Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on Zoom or tuning in on Facebook Live. My name is Stephanie St. Amour, and I'm the Executive Director of Pipeline for Change. We launched Pipeline Panels as a partnership between the Pipeline for Change Foundation and the nonprofit of the San Francisco Giants, the Giants Community Fund. First, a little bit more about both organizations. The Pipeline for Change Foundation is committed to building an environment where every facet of the game is filled with diverse decision makers, leading to a richer and more representative game and a more just society. The Giants Community Fund uses baseball and softball as the vehicle and seeks to promote health, education, and character development to empower youth to be giants on the field, in the classroom, and in the community. The goal of the Pipeline Panels is simple: to use the platform of professional sports for social change by uniting experts across the industry to speak on crucial and timely societal topics. From representation in sports to advocating for equity, Pipeline Panels will provide the space to discuss topics that are not always easy, but necessary for uniting our community. Today, we're here to discuss the experiences of Hispanic players in baseball, and specifically the players for whom Spanish is their native language. These players come from many different countries and cultures, all with different backgrounds and journeys, but are united by one feature: a language barrier. They are expected to perform at the highest levels with no accommodations, but face additional pressures and obstacles. And today we'll discuss some of these experiences. On today's panel, we have the founder of Pipeline for Change and manager of the San Francisco Giants, Gabe Kapler. San Francisco Giants infielder from Venezuela, Wilmer Flores. San Francisco Giants assistant hitting coach from the Dominican Republic, Pedro Guerrero. San Francisco Giants quality assurance coach from Puerto Rico, Nick Ortiz. And retired Major League Baseball player who played with the Giants, Red Sox, and Braves from Venezuela, Pablo Sandoval. Gabe, kick it over to you to get started.
Thanks, Steph. I appreciate it. Nice job. And obviously appreciate all the work that you did to get ready for that introduction. PD, Nick, Flo, Sando, I really appreciate you guys joining us as well. This is a conversation that I think is long overdue. And as you guys all know, pretty meaningful to me. I know it's pretty meaningful to all of you as well. So I wanted to kind of kick it off and share why, at least for me, this became so important. I'm not even sure if I've shared this with you, Nick and Pedro. I don't think Flo and Pablo, you know this, but in the middle of my playing career, I went to Japan for a little while. It was a short stint in Japan, and I went to spring training for the first time over there and felt kind of lost, to be honest with you. I did have an interpreter with me, but one of the things, as you guys know, that's really important to me in a major league clubhouse is how I connect with players, how I connect with staff. And sometimes those come in the form of long form conversations. So not just like kind of a quick hit flyby conversations, but ones that have a chance to breathe and really be meaningful. And when I was in Japan, I was working with this interpreter, but I found it really challenging to connect with my teammates. I found it really challenging to connect with my coaches, found it really challenging to have interactions with umpires on the field. But in the clubhouse in particular, it was hard because there was always this lag in the conversation where I would be expressing myself, then the interpreter would take that information and give it to another player, let's say over some food in the clubhouse. And it would just take a while for that information to get back to me. So I was kind of feeling like I was twiddling my thumbs and kind of waiting. And it was actually a pretty long pause in how long that information got back to me. And so it's just really hard to make that meaningful, deep connection. So since then, I started paying more attention to the things that I experienced in Japan that I know our Spanish-speaking players experience first when they come over as minor leaguers, but then also at the major league level. Things like meetings in spring training, when I just see some Spanish speakers who don't have a good understanding or a good grasp of the English language, they're just kind of not there in the meeting with the rest of us. And I've always felt like, first, that it's not fair, and second, that we just have to do a better job of getting that information to those players. So I wanted to start and kick the conversation off with, can you guys relate to any of the feelings that and experiences that I just described playing in Japan? And Nick, I was hoping that you would kick this off for us and go first with some of your experiences.
Oh, thanks, Cap, and hi, everyone. My experience is a little different because I had the opportunity to live in Chicago for about 4 years when I was a kid. But I can relate to those times where I was in Chicago, and I understand exactly what you're saying. But I took the posture of helping others when I started playing professional baseball, as far as their language, helping them with their English. I was frustrated a little bit in a fact, this is in the 90s, that the organization wasn't providing the tools for the players to be at an equal spot. So I ended up being the person who was translating many of the things that were being said to the Spanish-speaking players. And, I think that puts them in a disadvantage at some point. I know the organizations have done a great job moving forward after that. And I've seen the progress on it, but I think there's still a lot more work that could be done. You're on mute, Cap.
Good call. So one thing I wanted to bring to light that I think everybody would benefit from hearing is sometimes how you feel even as a coach now, with like absolute full mastery of the English language, a beautiful way of speaking the Spanish language, but how sometimes even in our conversations in the coach's room, you can feel like you're a little behind. You've even shared with me in the past where it's like, man, if you could only speak Spanish in those conversations, you'd be able to express yourself differently. I just wanted to kind of hear if that still feels challenging to you.
Yes, no doubt. Well, I've progressed towards that. I kept, trying to get better at it. But there's times that I would prefer some of the things being explained to me in Spanish as well, even though I understand the master language. Most of my studying days, I was learning everything in Spanish. And, that's how I got accustomed to learning things. Even when I understand certain articles that I'm reading, for example, I sometimes translate them to Spanish to get a full understanding of things, because there might be 2 or 3 words that are lost in space that I can't really connect and put the dots. So even for me, that I've lived so many years in the States now, because of playing days and my coaching days, it's still challenging. So I can only imagine for kids who have no understanding of the language at all.
Pablo, can you talk a little bit about your level or your understanding of the English language when you first got here and started playing professional baseball?
Hi, how you doing? Thanks, guys. How you doing, guys? For me was tough because I was teenager. I was available to learn English. I was only speaking Spanish, and it was tough because we don't have the opportunity in my country to learn English. We don't got the opportunity to go to class and take an English class, and it was a challenge for me because without knowing the language, we progress through our career. But it's so many things and minor league that you can do better to be prepared and do things better and to help the Spanish speaking players. It's gonna be good thing for them because it's gonna be less challenge for them and gonna be ready to play baseball.
Is there anything in particular that comes to mind, like things that just, if we could just tweak just a little bit, that players who come to the United States without a real mastery of the English language, but we could help them? Are there things that come to mind right away?
Now the good things now in the minor in Dominican Republic, they're doing English class. It's one of good things for them because they're gonna learn the basic things. But you know, it's a lot of things that can help or bring the guys early in the off season to take a English class or taking 3 months, 4 months in a school learning English is going to be a good thing for them.
So I just wanted to throw out a quick opportunity. Stephanie had mentioned offline that if you feel comfortable answering any questions in Spanish, if you feel like you can articulate yourself well in Spanish in this moment about any questions that are being asked, even this one about like the things that we can do better, just riff in Spanish and we'll all figure it out together. Would that be any easier or no?
Excuse me?
Would you, if I asked you the question, what are some of the things that we can do better, right? As a baseball community.
Yeah.
And I said, answer the question in Spanish. Can you do that for us?
Yes.
Go for it.
Mira, podrían ayudar a los peloteros en muchas situaciones, especialmente si se le va a hacer un trabajo más fácil a los peloteros jóvenes cuando vengan de Dominicana, ya que en Dominicana están dando lo básico del español, pero del inglés. Entonces, si para progresar o tratar de hacer algo diferente, y ayudar a los peloteros jóvenes ahora, yo diría, o sería un consejo que yo podría dar, es que si pudiesen traer a los peloteros a estudiar inglés 2 o 3 meses para que ellos puedan progresar un poco más.
Cool. So this is, for me, this is a really cool opportunity to talk about some of the things that happen in our clubhouse, like literally right now, every single day. That conversation that Pablo and I just had, the back and forth, actually pretty typical, where we are trying to get the best possible information in the exchange, but there's just something that's like blocking all of the good information coming out, which again, this is where I feel like a lot of our native Spanish speakers are at a slight disadvantage or trying to think through their communication style in a different language. And so therefore, some of the nuances, like the little nitty gritty pieces of the information in the back and forth gets lost in translation. So I thought just as an exercise here, PD, would you mind kind of encapsulating or sharing what you heard from Pablo?
Yes, Cap. Thanks for having me here. He's basically saying that it will be very beneficial for the players that are in the Dominican Republic, especially because that's where the academies are, and they've been taught English down there, to come over here for 2 or 3 months during the off season. That way they get to practice what they've actually learning, which is the basics over there. But actually living through it, it will be like a much a better way for them to actually put in practice what they're learning.
That's perfect. And can you talk, PD, just a little bit about what you know about what we do at the DR academies? So obviously you have exposure from your time in other organizations, you have exposure just with your family, your own personal exposure. Most people who are here right now listening to this call don't really know what's going on at the academies. Maybe you could just kind of brief us with an overview.
Okay, so the thing that people don't know in the academies is that you're doing baseball like 24/7. Sometimes you're not even allowed to go home in the weekends, right? Like you're stuck in the academy for a month and you haven't gone home for like 2 days to see your mom and dad that live 2 hours away. So during this time that you're just doing baseball, you wake up at 6 in the morning, you go to breakfast, go do your practice, then you go to the game. Once the game is done, everybody usually, for the most part, take a nap and just to kind of recover because you're exhausted. And 4 o'clock, around 4, then you go to English class. And by that time, I'm telling you, your brain is exhausted. Like it is really hard to go up and try to learn something that you actually don't understand. That's pretty tough, especially knowing that you're not going to use it right there and then, and being young and a teenager, basically, you don't know how important it is going to be for your future. And that's one of the tougher things, honestly, because the baseball comes easy.
Flo, do you think it's possible that we do more when our Spanish-speaking players get stateside? So by way of example, once players are in Arizona for the Giants or in Florida for a lot of the other teams, are we doing everything that we can possibly do to set them up for success, or some things that we're missing that are pretty obvious?
Hi guys, how are you? I think us as the organization, we do a really good job. But going back to what you asked at first, I came as a 16-year-old with the Mets, and I knew a little bit of English, but I was scared to speak it just because I didn't know if someone was gonna make fun of me or I was speaking it right. So for players in the Dominican, I think we have to make sure they know how important it is and if they're willing to do it. Because I feel like a lot of players can learn and a lot of players know, but they just don't know how important it is, and they're just not willing to do it because we're just playing baseball. But the reality is, like, when we having a meeting, we want everybody involved, and we want everybody to understand what the meeting is about and what everybody's saying. So I think we're a little bit scared of what people are gonna think. And that, I think that's the first step that we need to take on.
So on the front of just like the slight bit of fear to kind of speak up or be a part of the meeting, I'm going to kind of set the stage for anybody that's on this call or watching this on Facebook Live, wherever you're watching it. Both Flo and Pablo, two players that I've worked with very closely. Flo for a really long time, Pablo for a shorter period of time. They're both lead by example type players, right? So what that means is they prepare relentlessly. They're ready for any moment during the game. They want the biggest opportunities. They perform on the biggest stage, and they do that sort of day in and day out. And one of the things that I've personally been wrestling with over, I don't know, the course of the last several years, I've shared a lot of this with Pedro and with Nick, is how to make those voices louder, the ones with like the best work habits, the strongest desire to win and to compete, the big desire to pull people together, like raise those voices up and make them louder in our clubhouse, because I feel like those leadership characteristics, there's more there. We can get more out of them. So like one thing that I'm constantly thinking about is how do we make that fear go away just a little bit, Flo, not with you specifically, but with players in general, so that all of those leadership characteristics can come out and really move the needle in things like clubhouse speeches or meetings in my office or meetings in spring training. Does that make sense, the question I'm asking?
Yeah, it's I think it's just sitting with players and tell them that that you have a voice, and either in Spanish or English, but we just want to know what you're thinking. Because a lot of times when I say something in English, even though I understand and people can understand what I'm saying, I feel like I'm not expressing myself the way I want to express in English. So it's different when I'm saying in Spanish. It's like I express myself well, but I feel like in English, when I'm in a meeting in English, I feel like people are not understanding my message a lot of times. So that's kind of where it gets mixed up.
Yeah, and I can speak from experience that when you do speak up and everything is understood, and like people kind of halt to attention. Like when you talk, people shut up and listen. And that's just sort of what we need a little bit more of. Again, like not calling any one individual out, just generally in baseball. I think these voices are so important. Pablo, I'd like to hear your perspective on the same question that I asked Flo.
You guys doing a great job. You guys having so many young guys, and And having Flo in the clubhouse is good experience and good leadership in there. But you know, it's kind of more the guys want to spread themselves no matter how, if you understand or not. That's why you have so those guys of their Nick or all the guys in there, but they have to spread themselves no matter what situation they've been through. And you know, they don't have to be afraid to talk. It's one of the things, and it's type of things that so many guys, they're shy to talk, they're afraid to do it. But it's one of the things that they need to lose the fears and the shyness to express herself.
That's really well said. I was just thinking about, we had one meeting this year earlier in the season, and I don't have to give away any details there. There's nothing proprietary about it. There's nothing private about it. The only thing I'll say is Tyro Estrada spoke up, and when Tyro speaks, like kind of like Flo, people really respect his voice. And part of the reason they respect his voice is because of what he does every single day to get ready for the game, and how much he gives to his teammates. And Pedro was there and absolutely slayed that messaging. Basically, he was working hand in hand with Tyro to get Tyro's messaging out. And Petey, I don't know if you want to not necessarily talk about the messaging, but some of the challenges or the steps that led up to making that meeting happen.
Well, Tyro first approached Nick and me and wanted to say a couple of things on how he was feeling because of how we were playing, and he wanted to approach the whole team, but he wasn't sure if he wasn't the leader. He basically asked Nick, like, we don't have a leader. And Nick and I said at the same time, simultaneously, like, you can say it. You care enough that you're doing this, and this is the first step that you need to take in order to call out on a meeting for the whole team. So the challenges throughout the meeting is basically you want to kind of like let the people know and feel what the person is saying in Spanish. And that's the tough part, because now you got to remember the words and the parts where he puts emphasis, and you want to transmit that message, not just the message, because anybody can get up and translate, but you want to actually deliver the message behind the what's being said. And I think that's the biggest challenge of any time you're translating, which is huge.
Nick, you have anything on that one?
Yeah, so in that regards, I want to say, I think the structure that we've created for all our Latino players have given them a voice, have given them the confidence to be able to speak, and like the Tyro wanting to send a message at any point in time during the season. For example, you know, we have a Spanish speaker in every department, whether it's sports, strength and conditioning, whether it's medical, hitting, fielding. Every department has a Spanish speaker, whether it's a coach or, like I said, somebody else in the department. So that's letting them know that they are very important. And the numerous conversations that we've had as a staff with the Latino players has also let them know that they have a voice, you know, that they're equal to every other player that's in the clubhouse. And I personally think that it's not a coincidence that we see Wilmer Flores having one of the greatest years he's ever had in his career. Tyro Estrada becoming an established second baseman at the big league level. Even guys like Luis Matos coming in and tackling some of bats at age 21 and feeling really comfortable and knowing how to handle himself. It has a lot to do with the structure. And if something I think that could come out of this conversation that it's positive is that for other people to understand and have empathy for how important it is for these guys to feel safe, to feel like they're in an environment that they are protected, that they're in an environment that they're understood. And I think that's what we've had for them this year. And, you know, we're only looking forward to putting them even in a better spot in the future.
That's really good. And I'm actually curious if, and this is for everybody. So Flo and Pablo, as Stephanie mentioned, from Venezuela, Pedro from the DR, Nick from Puerto Rico. Do you sense that players have different challenges, struggles from different parts of Latin America.
Who wanna start?
Go for it. You.
Yes, I think so, because we're different culture, and I think so. Dominican players and Venezuelan players is kind of similar, but we have some challenge and difficult to learn things and in other languages. I think it's kind of hard for every country to learn Spanish speaking.
I think once again, we have to somehow just have them understand how important it's going to be in their baseball career, and it's not just hitting the ball and catching the ball. But if we just focus on how important it is and let them know that they have to, because I feel like some guys are just not willing to do it because they feel like they don't need to, but just letting them know that they will need the language.
From the Dominican Republic, basically, I think it's important for people to understand how the process works. In Dominican, baseball is basically the only way out to become wealthy or help your entire family, like have a nice home or a decent home at least, right? But when you're young, the first thing that you do is not even think about school. Is like, let's go to the field. In order to go to the field, you have to like finish homework per se, and then you finish homework. But it gets to a point that you're old enough, that you're getting close to age 16 to do tryouts, that school knows is not the most important thing, because now you're a little bit older, right? You have to sign at a certain age, 16, 17. After that, then you could not sign a professional baseball contract. So you're 12, 13, 14. Those ages, I think we are failing as a country because we are not prioritizing learning. So back to Nick's point, when we talk about this the first time, that we need to learn how to learn. Is these kids stop learning? Yeah, they're not going to use an equation formula to play the game, but that equation formula that you learn in school, taught you how to learn. And those are things that I think when we're teaching them situations on the field, defense, offensively, science, these are things that it takes time to learn, and they haven't developed that skill yet because they stop at such a young age that now they're trying to learn it in a different language. So now it becomes even a bigger challenge. That's my 2 cents in that.
No,
Oh, go ahead, Cap.
No, go ahead, Nick. I'll go after you.
Yeah, from the perspective of the players from Puerto Rico, we're a little different, right? We're part of the U.S. We're actually property of the United States, and we're U.S. citizens. In our schools, English is taught, not at the same level that is taught, obviously, here in the United States. But you can pretty much say that kids that go to school and graduate out of high school have a good understanding of the English language. They'll be able to at least have a good base where it allows them to come into professional baseball with not as much as disadvantage of some of the kids that come out of Venezuela and Dominican Republic. And you also got to understand that I'm going to speak in behalf of the kids in Dominican Republic and Venezuela. The situation over there sometimes is critical, because of the government. Some of these kids are just fighting to get the next meal. And yet we're asking them to prepare to be really good baseball players. And then on top of that, we sign them and then we give them the language barrier that they have. And it's part of it. We know the big leagues are played in the United States. One thing I really make an emphasis on our team and the players in our team, even at the big league level, is that, yes, we're going to continue to provide you, and this is to Flo's point, with every information that you have that you need in Spanish, because there's so much at stake. But at the same time, we have the obligation to make you better at English. So that way you're not in need of us. You only will use us if you feel like we're your best option, but we want to create players that are able to express themselves in any language. And I think one thing that we've done really, really well in the clubhouse is that we've made it important but not only for the Spanish speaking players, but also for the American players. And I find myself in a position that an American player might come to me and, hey, can you please say this to Tyro? Hey, let's talk to Tyro about this. And I think that's one of the most important things, to create that sense of empathy from people that are around these players, that are part of a group, that are part of an organization, or part of the team, go, and making them understand that, hey, even if you make a mistake, players, they have your back.
Cool. I guess I wanted to sort of piggyback just for a moment on Pedro and Nick's point about kind of learning how to learn, and maybe in particular, learning how to learn at the major league level, and wondering if it's too late at that point. Yeah, I don't think it is necessarily, but I want to hear your perspectives on this. So we have some Spanish speakers on our team every year that could use the ability to whatever, get up to speed faster, however you want to classify it. Is there enough incentive for those players to take the time in their day? Just think about any of our Spanish speakers and allocate an hour to helping them with that part of the game, or is it just not that important to them? Yeah, what's your take on that?
Well, for me, I think it's important to them. I think, the more time you spend in the big leagues, the more opportunities that are out there for you. If you become a really good player, if you dominate, or at least have a sense of the English language, and are able to communicate. So in that regards, I think these players have some agents advising them to do a better job of trying to adapt to the English language. So, that's why I think, from my perspective, I talked to, for example, Tyro, that I'm pretty much with him on an everyday basis in the infield. Like, hey, continue to learn these words in English, because they can only make you better. You're putting yourself in a really good spot at the major league level. You're demonstrating you're a really good player, and a lot of opportunities could come your way just by knowing the English language. So like Flo said, just letting them know how important it is for them to adapt as well.
Okay, so one more question on that. So for those who are watching, we evaluate baseball players in several different categories. Things like arm strength and bat speed, power, like raw power, game power, all of those things that everybody knows about. But then there's this one thing that we evaluate players on, and we call it makeup. So essentially, it's like the intangibles, the desire to win, how these players interact with their teammates, how they behave when the going gets tough, the choices that they make off the field. And so this is one area where our players have a chance to make additional money, where our players have a chance to be more attractive, both in the organization that they're in and to outside organizations. So I guess what I'm thinking about here is, do we misunderstand Spanish-speaking players' makeup because we don't know them well enough?
I think that's fair to say, 100%. It goes back to being personal, right? Like, if you can't communicate with somebody, you feel like you can't start a conversation. Like, when we're learning English, we're like, okay, I know, hi, my name is Pedro, what's yours? And then after that, you're running away because you don't know what else is going to come out, and you don't know what to say after that. But in reality, just to share a little story on that, like, I remember being in a hotel in extended. For the people that don't know what extended is, it's 2 months of baseball, no fans, just brutal weather. Nobody wants to be there. And this is 2 weeks left for extended to be over. And there is 2 players rehabbing, AA, a pitcher, Pfeiffer, and an infielder, Bridget Hunt. And these guys asked me, hey, you want to go tubing? We didn't know each other, but they're like, I'm like, tubing? I don't know what tubing was. So I didn't understand the word. I'm like, to get out of the room, anything. Yeah, let's go. So, I put some shoes, and they're like, no, you need shower shoes. So I get shower shoes, and we go. And once I got there, they pay for everything. They cover everything. I had no idea I was going to have such a good time. I had a great time. And we come back the next day. We barely talk. It was an amazing experience for me. And the next day on the field, I felt like I had 2 buddies there. And this happened 13 years ago. I still remember their names. That was probably the only opportunity we have to hang out outside of the field and do something unique for me. And I still remember their names till to this day because it was such a special moment for me. So there are little things like that that can happen in a clubhouse, even though the communication is not there. I think caring for what the other person likes or what they might know or not know, and that if you're willing to like communicate and just experience things with them, then that goes a long way.
Pablo, I'm actually curious about your perspective on, did you ever feel misunderstood? Did you start your career feeling misunderstood, or even like towards the end? What do you got there?
Plenty times, especially when your first year here. I got good teammates. They had a patient to teach me, and I had the opportunity to learn from them. And I got good translate. Was Sergio Roma. I got the opportunity to play through my career, and it helped me with a lot of things to learn and teach me things to express myself to my teammates. It's one of the things that the Latin players need to have. Don't be afraid to get to an American player to express yourself, and don't be afraid to talk. They're gonna teach you the right way, or if you say something bad or something not the right way, they're gonna correct you. And it's one of the things that sometimes Latin players don't want to do it because they're afraid they're making fun of him. And I got so many things that I was doing. I don't know how to order the food in Subway. It's things that the guy teach me. I remember the name Tyler Welding teach me to how to order the food. So it's a lot of things in your career you can learn and be a specific things to be available to speak.
Can we shift focus to umpires for a minute? So another thing for me to touch on when I went over to Japan, I got very used to in the batter's box to when there's a borderline pitch, having a conversation with the umpire. So that conversation, the ball's inside off the plate, might turn to the umpire and say, is that as far inside as it's going to go? And maybe the umpire says something back to me like, Cap, that got the plate. There might be even a little bit more in there. So just know that, it might go further inside. So one thing that I'm thinking a lot about, especially when I see Flo at the plate, Estrada at the plate, are these conversations happening in the same way? Are there things that we can do better with like making sure that our umpires speak Spanish? Do you think that's a fair thing for us to work on in Major League Baseball?
Flo, you want to handle that one for the players that have been there?
Yeah, definitely. There were so many times where I've been wanting to say something to the umpire when I get a back call, and I just hold it and I don't say anything because I don't know how it's gonna take you. I don't know if he gets me, and I just go for it, not saying nothing. So there's something I can do better. But I feel like this year with the pitch clock, we don't have a lot of time to complain or anything like that. But yeah, I've been in those situations before.
Yeah, I see that one as bullshit. It's a really unfair advantage in my opinion, and I just think there are ways that we can do that. We can do that one a little bit better. Nick, do you have any thoughts on that one? Pedro.
I don't have any thoughts on how to make it better. I just think it is tough for guys that they feel like they can ask. Like, I think it was Lucy saying during his first game, he asked the umpire, like, hey, I think that was a ball. And it happened to be actually a speaking Spanish umpire. And he took it like, it's your first game. You know, like, don't be asking me. And he was actually right. It was a ball. But I think it's tough because it comes back to just the type of person who's behind the plate, right? Like, it's just human nature in which somebody tells you you're wrong and automatically you get defensive. And if the person saying that you're wrong, hey, I didn't like that call, and you don't say it in a tone or you don't say it in the right way in English, then it can come off really bad too. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like it's a tricky subject to talk about, right? But again, like it's just a small thing in how we might be able to kind of level the playing field. A conversation with an umpire could extend to a conversation with a manager to express displeasure, and a conversation with a member of the front office to kind of state your case on something. And just hearing Flo say, you know, sometimes I walk away and I don't say anything at all. You can kind of see how, you know, you have this kind of authority figure. You're not sure how that authority figure is going to take it. And so you're not going to do it in the same way that you might do it in, you know, in what Nick describes as a safe place. So yeah, I'm just trying to probably figure that out a little bit. Nick, I wanted to shift gears just a little bit to something that is really powerful that you say sometimes, which is how sometimes native Spanish speaking players can be judged on their intelligence based more on their understanding and knowledge of the English language, and how that frustrates you.
Yeah, the line that I use is that the English language, or any language whatsoever, should not be a measurement of intelligence, right? There's a lot of really intelligent players in the game that can express themselves, and they're being viewed as people who are not or just don't dominate any particular area, or are not that intelligent, which is not the case. You see many of these players that are giving interviews after the game in Spanish. They could pretty much do it in English, but they're not going to be as fluid, and they're not going to be finding the right words all the time. So I think the exposure that they get nowadays is worldwide, and they just don't want people to feel like they don't know what they're talking about, or they're not intelligent. It's like they just don't dominate the language, which is totally different, right? So yeah, that's one thing that we got to continue to work on. Just letting people know that we have a lot of things to provide to this game, even if we don't dominate the language. And at the same time, I feel like we have an obligation, like Flores said, to continue to get better little by little. So if what we do as an organization will help other teams provide their players with more coaches that speak Spanish, or more people in every area that speak Spanish, I think we have an obligation as people in the game to leave the game better than we found it, right? That we were part in it. So, you know, that benefits the game, and it also benefits the players that are going to be in the game for a long, long time. So, yeah, I go back to empathy, right? Letting people know that, you know, these players care about the language, but sometimes they get put in a situation that in front of the world, they're going to be judged, and, you know, they prefer speaking Spanish, so they're understood.
Right. And I do think that the onus is on us, the English speakers, in those situations. Not that I don't believe that it's important for everyone to do their best to learn new languages, but I feel like, as you mentioned, Nick, and the most important thing that I take away is it's learning how to learn to some degree or another. And to Pedro's point about it's just not that easy. So we have the ability to make it easier stateside. And again, like, I feel like we're just scratching the surfaces on ways to do that. Does that make sense to you, Nick?
Yes, no, totally. And, you know, even I feel like in this conversation, when I'm in front of people, I speak a little bit slower than I normally speak when we're in the clubhouse, when I'm around people that I'm comfortable with. because I know if I make a mistake, I'm comfortable with those people. They'll just correct me instead of judge me. So you know, I think you're right on. I think the people that are listening to these players speak, or any person that doesn't dominate the language speak, should be conscious of the fact that it's their second language. And you know, it's funny because sometimes the people that are judging only know English. At least this person knows Spanish and some English. And you know, so when you do the math, we're a little bit ahead in that sense. So you know, just going back to the players, it's just about making them feel comfortable, Cap. If they feel comfortable, they're gonna have the ability to communicate. They're gonna feel in a better spot. And I think providing them with their, you know, with a voice is very important for them. So you know, just continue to do what we're doing, and hopefully other teams will catch on and put players in a better situation.
What do you think, Pedro, in terms of like any levers that we can pull, like things that we can do right away to make things better? Again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot at all, but I know we've discussed. What about like just in the cage? Pedro spends a lot of time working with our hitters. So by way of example, we have these game plans for our players on a daily basis based on what the opposing pitcher might do to get them out. Do we do enough on that front? I mean, of course, it's just Flo, it's Tyro, Luis Matos, Elliot Ramos to some degree. But are we doing enough in the cage?
Yeah, I feel like with all of that, besides just trying to make it simpler for them in terms of they understand it and it's not overwhelming according to the individual, I think we do a really good job in terms of that. We do not translate all the pages. That's why I'm there. So I'm kind of that filter to them. So I think I would say good, because I'm the one doing it, but you know, maybe ask Nick.
Well, you know, I think Flo is the guy to ask here. He can give the best input, and the players' feedback so far on that regards have been really, really positive. So maybe Flo can help us out with this one.
Yeah, Pedro does a really great job of communicating what JB is trying to tell us. What their approach is going to be in Spanish and Spanish, especially the title. And yeah, he translates everything, and he's right on point. He does a really good job.
Hey, Pablo, what do you think has changed from the time that you came into the league, now that you have like lots of years under your belt? You saw the 2020 season, but you also saw seasons much earlier than that. So what do you think has changed in baseball, good or bad?
It's good. It's good because it's good and bad. Got a lot of things, like we got translate. We got people can help you a lot, big time. Back in the day when I was a rookie, we don't have those opportunities those guys have. And having guys like Pedro, I never worked with Pedro, but I worked with Nick. Nick do a great job with those young guys, with the Latin guys. He do fantastic, help everyone. I hope listen to Wilmer. Pedro doing a great job to helping those young guys. But back in the day, we don't have the opportunity those guys have. The baseball's been changing a lot of things. And the good part for the Latin guys, and the other part, the Latin guys need to make sure to take advantage of those things, because I know it's not easy, because Spanish is way different than English. If you try to pull words in Spanish, in English it's gonna come backward. But you have to work with that, and young guys need to learn how to take advantage of those things.
Okay, I have a question for Petey. So if I was going to go manage in the DR in winter ball, what would be my biggest challenges? What would I need to know?
Where they sell the chimi sandwich in the corner, number one. It's really good in the streets. But I think the biggest challenge is going to be definitely communication and understanding the culture. I think the bridge to bring different cultures together is it comes down to like what you grew up with. So food, music, and just, you know, get involved. Like that's what people appreciate when you show that you are grateful that you're learning something that is about them, about their roots, what my culture admires and likes. Like, and when you dig into those things, then that's the bridge. I think it brings everybody together.
I feel like I'd have no problem on the food and, and music front. I feel like that's the place, like the easiest place to thrive. So how come we don't do more of that here? I feel like we could set up opportunities to bond over food and music.
¿Qué tú crees de eso, Flo? Flo, te fuiste.
I think Flo might be frozen.
It looks frozen.
There we go.
He's back.
Yeah.
¿Qué tú crees de eso?
What was the question again? No, otra vez se frizó.
¿Qué tú crees si podemos hacer más actividades o cosas como para integrar culturas en el equipo de nosotros? Así la gente se comunica un poquito mejor y pues podemos tener un puente que nos una un poquito más.
Bueno, yo creo que la comida la hacemos nosotros bastante bien. Creo que nosotros nos ponen comida venezolana, un día nos ponen comida dominicana. Nos hacen cachap. Pero no, yo creo que hacemos un buen trabajo trayendo toda esa cultura y you want to translate that? No, déjalas.
So he basically just said that we do a good job by integrating different foods. Like we do cachapas in the clubhouse, you know, Venezuelan. That's from Venezuela. We do some other things that like mango in the mornings at times. So like it's Dominican and he believes that with the food we do a lot of good things right.
What do you think on that front, Nick? I know you love good music.
Yeah, I think you know, we ever since we've been here, we've been good on music. You know, when we had Johnny Cueto, we had Cueto Day. Every song was played through the clubhouse and outside the stadium during batting practice. I've integrated some of the salsa music to the coaches' room. They pretty much didn't have many exposure to it, so we listened to it once in a while. And you know, I think we're moving the needle in the right direction towards that. But I want to mention something that I've noticed in the interactions that we had here. Flores speaks the English language really well. Pablo spoke also in English, and the difference when they speak Spanish, you can really tell. Like they're more fluid. They have a smile. Everything comes out together nice. You could even see it on their faces. I mean, if you're really paying attention, and it goes a long way, because when you're trying to develop a player, go down to the minor league system where we all work on player development, and still at the big league level, we're big enforcers on continued development at the big league level with players. It is so important for the coach to understand the player and create that relationship, because not every instruction is from the coach to the player. Sometimes we benefit from what the player has to say, so we can give the right instructions to them and pay attention to their needs. So that's what I took out this interaction right here and now. I just really wanted to mention that. And as far as the music goes, we can turn it up next year a little bit and put more Spanish music in the clubhouse as well.
I think we can do that. And by the way, I noticed the exact same thing. Just like the faces just light up. You know, Flo started speaking Spanish, and all of a sudden it just like, and also like the mannerisms, right? The hand gestures, the body language, it just kind of gets a little bit more expressive and a little bit more demonstrative, which I just really think is cool. But it's really that we're trying to get to. Nick, back to your point of like, we just have to make people feel as comfortable as possible. So just kind of shoulders relax, and you don't feel like you're trying to impress anybody. It's more just like be yourself. So it is definitely a lot about language, but I also think it's about just straight up effort, you know, to kind of create these kind of spaces to talk about these things.
Totally agree.
Okay,
and,
cool. No, go Nick, go.
Yeah, so I was going to mention, like, even for guys like me that have a clear understanding of the English language, sometimes we feel like we have two different personalities, right? Like, I'm one way, they're talking about something that I don't really understand in English. And when I say I don't understand, it might be a topic of politics. It might be a topic of history, but I wasn't born with that. I wasn't born in the States, so it's not the same history that I received in school. And politics is not the same politics that we do back home. So in that moment in time, I'm a quiet person. I can't put my 2 cents in because I don't know what we're talking about. And it changes the way you are in comparison to having that conversation, maybe in Spanish, and about something that goes on in our countries. And, you know, it's almost like when you're here, you're one way, and then when you're in your country with the people that you really feel comfortable with, you know, you're another. We do the best possible job to blend in, but it's just the difference of culture, right? Maybe I have to do a better job of understanding and knowing the history and the politics of this country. And at the same time, people, when I'm in that situation of being quiet at a conversation, I don't want to be perceived as somebody who's not engaged. I just rather not speak out of something that I don't know.
Yeah, love that, Nick. So we're bumping up against the last couple of minutes. Just want to make sure, just take a second. And first of all, thank you, Pedro, Nick, Flo, Pablo, for being a part of this discussion. I think we all kind of learned a lot. Also enjoyed the discussion as well. Making sure that there's nothing else that anybody wants to say before we hop off. So I don't want it to be like an abrupt end to the conversation.
I'm good.
That's all good.
Good.
Appreciate you guys.
Right,
and thanks for everyone who tuned in. Much love and respect. We'll see you down the road.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
On behalf of Pipeline for Change and the Giants Community Fund, thank you everyone for joining us today and for this Pipeline panel. And for our next call, please follow us on social media at Pipeline for Change and at Giants Community Fund. Thank you all.